5. Today, we're diving into some really, really powerful material you've brought us. It's excerpts from a book called The Tree Bride. And, well, this isn't exactly light reading. It's quite a raw, unforgettable story coming straight from rural Sindh in Pakistan. It tackles some heavy themes head on: tradition, shocking injustice, and that fight for basic human rights. It really stays with you.
Yeah, it really does. And our goal here for this deep dive is to really excavate the specific events, and the underlying issues that these excerpts bring up. We're tracing a path. It starts with this profound injustice, and it leads to a really devastating, but, ultimately inspiring legacy.
Yeah.
What can we actually learn from this about the forces at play, those powerful, sometimes invisible forces, and the resilience of the human spirit when it's pushed, right to the limit?
Okay, right. So let's unpack the story you've shared with us. Let's start at the beginning with the unthinkable act that really kicks everything off. The scene opens in this village, Bakarani, in rural Sindh. What does the material tell us about this place?
Well, it describes Bakrani as almost untouched by modern times, really. It's governed by these traditions that are incredibly strong, and often, they favor men quite heavily and restrict women's lives. It's a harsh environment, the material says, and land. Land is absolutely crucial. It's not just property, it's power, it's status, identity. So inheritance is, it's everything.
Right. And at the center of all this, there's a young woman, Samina. Who is she? What's her situation?
So Samina is the daughter of a landowner, Malik Gul Hassan, who had passed away. And the key detail here is that she inherited a pretty substantial share of his land, an equal portion, actually, to her brothers, Ahmed, Shabir, and Kareem.
And that immediately sounds like the crux of the problem, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Her brothers see this inheritance, they see it as a threat. The land, the influence it brings, it could leave the family if Samina marries an outsider, someone they don't control. The description says their hearts turn black with greed.
Precisely. And so they come up with this, what the book chillingly calls a dark plan. Instead of letting her marry a man, which would mean the land potentially leaves the family, they decide to marry her to a sacred neem tree, right there in their own courtyard.
Wow. And how do they even justify that?
Well, they twist it. They frame it using spiritual or religious language. They call it a spiritual remedy needed to restore the family's barakat.
Barakat. So what does that mean in this context?
Barakat's like a spiritual blessing, prosperity, grace. They claim the family's lands are cursed somehow, and this forced symbolic marriage is presented as the way to appease, higher powers and bring back this blessing.
So they're basically manipulating local superstition, preying on belief for their own gain.
Completely. It's a cold, calculated manipulation.
And the description of the wedding itself is just awful. Her screams are muffled. She's dressed in white, which, is usually for mourning or sainthood, not a wedding.
Right, no celebration.
No bangles, just tears. They get a bribed Malvi, a local religious figure, pick witnesses who will go along with it, put a jasmine garland on the tree, and force her to touch its roots. It's like sealing her fate in the most grotesque way possible.
And her life changes instantly. She's confined, put in this small, dark, mud brick hut right next to the tree. No fan, in the sin heat.
Unbelievable.
No windows, and the door's locked every night. Her new role is basically forced upon her. She has to be a spiritual devotee of this tree to maintain the, quote, sanctity of her marriage.
Okay, but then the story takes this really strange twist, doesn't it? Samina, the prisoner they tried to erase, she starts becoming, a legend. The tree bride.
Yeah, isn't that something? People actually start seeking her out. Villagers, especially women facing difficulties, infertility, troubled marriages, other misfortunes, they start coming to her.
Why? What do they think she can do?
They believe her closeness to the sacred tree has given her some kind of divine wisdom or power. So trapped in her hut, she becomes this, unlikely source of solace, offering whispered prayers, handing out these little folded papers with verses, taweez, which are believed to be protective charms.
So the brothers' attempt to control and silence her actually backfires, in a way. It creates this weird space where she gains a different kind of influence, even if it's really limited and based on superstition.
Exactly. It's a profound irony, right? This shows how human needs, human belief can sort of twist and reappropriate even acts of intense cruelty.
So the material then jumps forward 2 years. What's Smanana's state then?
2 years on, she's physically affected, obviously. The text says she's thinner, paler. It's a prisoner's life. But her spirit isn't completely broken. She has this nightly ritual, apparently, talking to the tree, whispering her hopes, her longing for something more.
And that's when Fatima arrives.
Right. Fatima, a middle-aged woman, and she comes to the tree bride seeking help. But not for herself, it's for her son, Imran. He's just come back from law school in Hyderabad, and he's, well, struggling a bit, finding his way.
And hearing that word lawyer, that seems to be the catalyst, right? It sparks something in Samina, a fragile idea, a spark of rebellion.
That's the absolute turning point. Samina makes a move. She gives Fatima this small folded note meant only for Imran. You can almost feel the risk, the hope in that moment. Her eyes are pleading, the text says, but she keeps her composure.
And the note. Simple but powerful.
Yeah. Come see me, alone. I need your help. I trust no one else.
It just highlights how isolated she is, and maybe, just maybe, who she feels she can reach out to.
It signals that she sees something different in him, maybe because of the law background, the connection to Hyderabad, a world outside.
Precisely. A potential escape route, or at least a chance to fight back.
So Imran goes. The description sounds quite atmospheric, him arriving alone, Friday afternoon, simple clothes. He enters the hut, that dim light, the smell of incense and neem. And Samina, she finally tells her story, her real story, in this voice, described as barely a whisper, but with this burning clarity in her eyes. She says it. I am not a saint. I am not a bride. I am a prisoner.
Wow.
She just lays it all out. The coercion, the lies, the 2 years of isolation.
And she makes the motive crystal clear. They stole my life because I stood in the way of their greed. Just strips away all that spiritual nonsense.
Yeah. And for Imran, I mean, imagine, he's this young lawyer, probably full of ideals from law school, maybe only read about rights and injustice in books, and now he's face to face with this raw, brutal injustice.
Theory meets a very harsh reality.
Exactly. And his reaction, according to the text, is immediate, resolute. He says, we'll fight them. I'll take your case no matter the cost.
But Samina, she knows her brothers. She knows their power in that village. She warns Imran, doesn't she? Tells him they'll try to crush him.
She does.
Yeah.
And his reply, they're just defiant. Then let them try. That really sets the stage for the conflict to come.
So they filed a case at the local police station. And the description there is vivid, like dropping a stone in a still, stagnant pond. Immediate, violent ripples.
Oh, yeah. The brothers react instantly, total denial.
Yeah.
They immediately try to paint her as a mentally unstable, delusional, the classic tactics.
Like the local police. The local system.
Fails them completely. Described as sluggish and compromised. They offer Singana no protection whatsoever. It just shows how deep that local power structure runs.
But Imran doesn't give up there.
No, and this is crucial. He realizes the local system is, well, useless in this case. So he reaches out. He contacts the Nusrat Foundation, which is a women's rights NGO down in Karachi.
External help.
Vital external help. They step in, and they manage to get Samina safely to a women's shelter in Karachi. Get her out of immediate danger.
And slowly the story starts to leak out, right? Into the wider world.
Yeah, through back channels, it says. It starts appearing in the media, but just as these small, kind of intriguing headlines at first. Woman claims forced marriage to tree, or cursed bride or victim, that kind of thing.
And back in Bakarani, what's the reaction there?
It's really divided, according to the text. On one hand, you have open hostility from some people, whispering about shame, cursing her name. But then there's this other reaction, especially among the young people, the girls particularly. They see her as someone who's actually daring to challenge the old ways, maybe for the first time.
And the legal fight itself sounds incredibly tough.
Oh, brutal. It dragged on, the material says. The brothers hired these ruthless lawyers who used every dirty trick, character assassination, apparently forged documents, bribed witnesses, everything.
Yet Imran holds firm through all that. His statement in court is pretty powerful.
Yeah, he cuts right through their tactics. This isn't a story of spiritual devotion. It is a crime against womanhood, against humanity.
But despite all that, the local court, it rules against them.
It does. The influence of the brothers, it says, just ran too deep in that local system. It's a huge setback. Really shows the limits of seeking justice when the system itself is compromised.
A devastating blow. But Imran isn't broken.
No. Crushed, maybe, but not broken. He takes the next vital step. He appeals the case, takes it to the High Court of Sindh.
And that move changes everything, doesn't it?
Completely changes the game. Once it hits the High Court, the world starts watching.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly, Samina's face is on TV. Her story is trending on social media. Hashtag Justice for Tree Bride.
And public support starts building.
Massively. Protests erupt in Karachi, in Hyderabad. People holding these powerful, simple signs. A tree is not a husband, and honor-based oppression. The message is clear.
The media digs deeper too, it seems.
Yeah, journalists start uncovering other things about the family, hidden land deals, illegal holdings. It just adds more pressure. And international human rights groups offer legal support.
So this one specific case from this remote village, it blows up. It becomes this huge symbol.
Exactly, a symbol of this fight between, tradition and progress,
Yeah.
silence and voice. It captured the public imagination.
And then comes that moment in the high court. Samina speaks for herself.
Yeah, a packed courtroom.
Yeah.
And her words, the text says they echoed like a psalm. Incredibly powerful.
What did she say?
I was married to a tree, not by choice, but by force. And yet today, I stand here not as a victim, but as a woman who refused to be erased. Just, wow. A declaration of agency after everything.
And the high court, they rule in her favor.
They do. The material notes the judges were basically bound now by scrutiny and shame, the public pressure, the media attention. They had to uphold the law.
So a clear legal victory. Land restored, brothers fined, banned from public office for 5 years.
Yes, a significant win, diminishing their power, restoring her rights.
Yeah.
On paper, at least.
On paper, because the victory is tragically short-lived.
Devastatingly short. Just 2 days after that ruling, Samina and Imran head back to the village. They have plans, collect their things, move to Karachi, open a legal aid center for rural women.
They had a future planned out.
They did. But then on this narrow road, flanked by sugarcane fields, ambush, masked men on motorcycles, shots fired. Hours later, their bodies are found, riddled with bullets. And the detail, their hands still clasped together.
That's heartbreaking.
And maybe the most chilling part, no one was ever arrested, no names were released.
But everyone knew.
The text says exactly that. Everyone knew who was responsible. The silence of the village spoke volumes.
It's just the stark reminder, isn't it, that a court ruling doesn't always mean safety. Justice in the courtroom isn't always justice on the ground, especially against that kind of entrenched power and violence.
But somehow the story, it doesn't actually end there. It shifts again. It becomes a legacy.
It does. Back in the village, that indifference or hostility, it changes to mourning. They build a mazar, a shrine, right there at the site where Samina and Imran were killed.
The description is quite beautiful, isn't it? 2 white marble graves beneath a canopy of flowering trees.
Yeah, and people visit. Lovers, especially, the material says. They place roses, light candles, whisper prayers. Their story, their sacrifice, it seems to become part of the local tapestry of love and loss. And it spreads beyond the village, too. Her story gets put into school books.
Yes, in Sindh, as part of a new curriculum on women's rights, teaching the next generation directly through her experience.
And the practical side lives on, too, with the foundation.
Exactly. The Samina Imran Legal Foundation in Karachi, providing free legal help to hundreds of rural women. So their fight continues through very real concrete action.
And every year, on the anniversary, thousands gather. Not just to mourn.
Not to mourn, but to remember, the text emphasizes, to remember that spirit, that ability to rise up, to speak, to love, even when facing overwhelming injustice.
And the tree, the neem tree where it all started.
It's still there.
Yeah.
It's still standing in the courtyard. Some people say it blooms more brightly now. Kids play under it. It's fascinating, isn't it? How the tree itself, the symbol of her prison, becomes this enduring witness,
Yeah.
transformed by her story.
And there's that final legend about hearing her voice in the wind.
Yeah, that when the wind blows through the leaves, you can hear her voice. Not in sorrow, but in strength.
Which connects so well to her own words from the epilogue.
It really does. They tried to silence me with a tree, but even trees have roots, and mine now grow through the heart of the nation. Powerful stuff.
Wow. So, pulling back, what does all this tell us? What are the big takeaways from these excerpts you brought?
Well, it starkly shows the devastating impact when oppressive traditions meet greed. It absolutely highlights the incredible, almost unbelievable courage it takes to challenge power structures that are that deeply embedded. And, perhaps most painfully, it underscores that even a clear legal win isn't always enough protection against violence that operates outside the law. That justice can be tragically incomplete.
Right. It's a story of just immense cost, isn't it? But also incredible resilience. That struggle for justice, even when paid for with lives, it can plant these roots, like she said, that grow deeper and wider than maybe anyone expected.
Absolutely. The story itself becomes a seed, doesn't it? For change, for memory, for continued action.
We've really gone deep into this unforgettable narrative you shared with us, tracing it from that specific, horrific act rooted in tradition and greed, right through the courageous public fight, the legal battles, to that tragic end, which still somehow sparked this powerful living legacy.
Yeah, it covers so much ground.
Thank you for bringing this incredibly important, really moving material for our deep dive today. It definitely leaves you thinking, leaves us thinking. You know, how do we make sure that the roots planted by stories like Samina and Imran's actually keep growing? How are they protected from the same forces that tried to silence them in the first place? And maybe what's the responsibility for those of us watching from the outside? How do we support these struggles, help ensure violence isn't the last word? Definitely something to mull over long after we stop talking.